Yes. Yes. Good, everybody.
Everybody who's in here, if other people show up.
Now, you also know.
Okay.
Can you shut the door? Hey guys, can everyone online hear me? Y'all let me know in the chat box if y'all can hear. Stacy, could you keep an eye on the chat in case we need to? Can you see that more?
Yeah, I can. Is it? Yep. Okay. Is it over there on the right bottom?
Okay. Steph, could you shut the door? Sorry guys, we've got a full house today. All right. Well, has everybody got the handouts that we did? Okay, we have more. If anybody comes in, handouts are over here.
I got like student body.
For those of you online, we'll get that put up. Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, guys, we have a great deal of respect for your time, and we have a lot of information to cover. Initially, I wanted this class to be about multiple offers for sellers because it really starts with the listing agent. However, just due to the amount of buyer offers that we're seeing written in multiple offers, we decided to switch it over to the buyer side first, and to just kind of go through how you can help your buyer clients, how you can be the professional and earn the, present some things during the buyer consultation that you should be having, especially in this market, to set yourself aside above the others. That way they hire you. And then some tools that you can implement in your the multiple offer process so that you can set the expectations for your buyer and have a positive outcome. So there's some things that we're going to teach you today that you can implement right away to try to win the bid. First of all, we do have a sheet here, but here's some things that we're going to go over today. We're going to first go over confirming with the agent that you are in a multiple offer situation. We're going to review some considerations, things that you need to consider and talk about with your buyer. We're going to talk about prospecting for information. And this is the number one piece that everybody seems to forget. So I've included some questions, and we're going to review today some questions that you can ask the listing agent so that you are setting your buyer up for success. We're going to go over how to guide them through the multiple offer process. We've got created a worksheet. And then we're going to talk about a buyer resume checklist, things that you can put together in a resume, and then how to present the offer to the listing agent. And so hopefully some of these tools are going to help you win the bid. So what are you guys experiencing out there in this multiple offer process that we're in? Because we've all been doing this for a while, but this year it's going to be probably every offer that you write. So tell us some of the things that you're experiencing within the market. Anybody?
Most things are getting over,
So what do you mean?
most of the offers are, most of them are going over.
So most offers going over asking price or list price,
Yeah.
right? Are you getting a lot of, are people hearing from the listing agents? Are you talking to them or are they just sending you to text and email?
Depends on what company you're with.
Okay,
Or the agent.
Had a few requests for appraisal gap clause.
okay, so we're gonna talk about that today, thank you. The appraisal gap clause, we're gonna talk about what that means. So Stacy brought up that she's hearing listing agents asking for the seller to cover any gap in appraisal between appraised price and list price or sales price. What else are we experiencing out there? Yeah.
Question, you said it's, I've never heard of this, appraisal gap clause.
An appraisal gap clause, which we're gonna talk about, and that's where the listing agent is asking that if the appraisal came in lower than the agreed upon purchase price, that the buyer would cover a certain amount to
Out of
protect
pocket.
and come out of pocket for that. Okay, so those are all some great things that we are all experiencing. Some things that I know that our team is also going through is, 20 offers on a property, never hearing from the listing agent, not knowing what they can, what the listing agent or the seller really wants, and therefore not knowing how to best advise their client. So we're seeing a lot of that. Yes,
I got a new one for you.
okay,
I had a buyer, signed all the paperwork, submitted an offer, and got a call from the listing agent to let me know that he was bidding against himself with another agent on the same property.
so the buyer's agent had two different buyers writing offers on the property, or the?
No, the buyer had two different agents
Oh.
writing offers for
Okay,
him
we're gonna-
on
we
the
can
same
talk-
property.
We can talk about submitting different offers, okay, we got that. Okay, so we had two different agents writing two different offers.
How does that work with the buyer's, with the buyer brokerage agreement?
Well,
We both had them. I just stepped out.
hence the reason,
I had one day into it and I was
Yeah.
like, ugh.
so you're gonna see a lot of that. I saw that a little bit last year where the buyer thought that the other agent wasn't doing a good job.
Yep,
And-
same situation.
And so he hired us so that we could present his offer, and the listing agent actually told us that she had two different buyers with the same names and asked if it was the same person. Because they can cancel one of the contracts if they win the bid. So they're just trying to increase their odds of winning the bid.
If they win the bid, so they can cancel the contract.
Due diligence, So we'll talk about that. That's really great. That's good. Anything online? Anybody hearing anything? Is there a chat box anywhere?
I know. Yeah, I don't understand.
All right, I'm really bad. I'm so used to spoiled by Kathy, but I want to go through, okay, chat. Here we
So
go.
one of the questions I have though is if you have an FHA or a VA buyer in this marketplace, how do you get accepted?
Mhm. We're gonna go over some great ways to do that. Let me see if Cassidy can get everybody that's online, the handout. I'm sorry, guys. I did not think about that, but I will have all these handouts for everybody at the end of the class. So what we're gonna go over, some things that I wanna be sure that we talk about today. And then we're also gonna talk about, where is that? Escalation clause, why or why not to use it. I know everybody knows about it. And then we're gonna talk about the lending process. So one of the first things that we need to do is we need to identify the buyer's goals and what their minimum and what their maximum offer is gonna be. And you need to know both upfront, because you can't help them if you don't know what they want. You need to also have permission from them when you're negotiating to go up to a certain amount, and you need to know that if you can't, you need to know where their ceiling is, okay? So on the handout, we're gonna go over. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, so second, we're gonna understand what the sellers, first of all, we need to know what our buyer wants to do. We need to understand what the seller's guidelines are, and we're gonna go over some of the questions that I have here and why I asked these questions. We're gonna obtain special information about the seller. We're going to present the best offer, we're gonna negotiate, and then we're going to get the contract signed. So I'm gonna go over some tips today with you on what to do. Now, in your handouts, and I will get this for you guys online. Where are we at? Let's go over the seller. Does everybody have this page, the seller pros and cons? This is something that you should put in your buyer consultation or save it on your desktop and have a Zoom conversation with your clients. They need to know what the pros and the cons are of multiple offers because you're setting the stage. They need to know this is going to happen. It's not a possibility. It's 99% likely that you're going to be in multiple offers. So what are some of the seller pros here? Effective use of competition can create a better outcome for the seller, resulting in a very positive feeling and satisfaction, right? They can provide the seller with flexibility, better terms. It keeps the buyers from playing games. Basically, the seller has the power, and it's all about the power, and it's all about what's best for the seller. Multiple offers can also hide a listing agent's weakness, right? If you're not a strong listing agent, you're going to look amazing with multiple offers. However, in our multiple offer listing class that we're teaching at the end of the month, you're going to want to come to that so that you know how to correctly do a multiple offer, because listing agents are supposed to notify every party that there is a multiple offer situation, and they also have to provide every buyer the same information. They can't be giving one buyer's agent information over another. It has to be consistent. So there should be documentation that you fill out at the listing presentation of what the seller wants when you enter into a multiple offer situation, so that you, the listing agent, are abiding by those rules, okay? The seller cons, what are the cons? What are some of these?
Overwhelming.
It's the stress, tough choices, feel sorry for people, your feelings start to come into play, you start making emotional choices. They have too many choices that they can't make a decision, and then they think it's gonna continue, you know?
They think you priced it too low.
They think you priced it too low. So then your credibility is coming into play here. That's why having these things in your listing presentation and adding your multiple offer strategy into your listing presentation is going to set some realistic expectations with your sellers.
Where can we get that?
There's a pass out, there's a
Oh,
handout.
no, for
Yeah,
that's for this, I'm just curious. I have a new listing coming up, so what you just said, I want to make sure.
Okay,
I'm
yes.
ready.
So they can also, what else? Can they focus on the price, causing other terms to be irrelevant, right? So when somebody sees price, all the other terms doesn't mean too much, right? And you may have missed the right buyer that has the best buying power because you were enamored by a price. So you have to be explaining these things in your listing and your buyer consultations. What are the buyer pros? What are the pros for the buyers? Right? There's very little. So as you see the pros here on this side and then the negatives, right? But you can create collaborativeness, right? It's going to teach you to be collaborative with the listing agent. You can use an escalation clause. We're going to talk about that later. it's gonna, you can gather information. Whoever has the most information has the power. So knowledge is power. You should, the negotiating starts when? When does the negotiating start? That's right. When you set the appointment or you're looking up the property, there should be a phone call to the agent. Now, I know this seems old school before showing time, but if you have showing time, you may want to consider not using it. Most listing agents use it, but don't let it be how you communicate to the listing agent. Showing time was set up to be a tool for sellers. It's not necessarily the best tool for buyer's agents, because your job is to get information for your client. And when you get the information for your client, you're going to seem like you are more knowledgeable. When you win the bid, the buyers are happy, right? So that's a pro. But look at all the cons. What are the cons? There's buyer remorse. There's
Price.
Yeah, the price you're paying over the list price, the market value. Your buyer isn't really protected in many ways.
Down the street from me, a house just went on, it's coming soon. And I'm still pretty new at this, but it's coming soon, and the agent reached out to other agents, and I happen to live obviously in the neighborhood. He put a coming soon on it Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I had a client interested on Sunday, but we couldn't make it to the open house, so I was trying to get pictures and information. He had nothing because it wasn't even going live or photos being done until Tuesday.
Right.
So why would you open an open house before you even have it going live for others to get?
Yeah, and that you're not. So we're going to see a lot of this, you guys.
Sell it in the summer.
We're going to see a lot of this happen where other agents are going to start turning other agents into the MLS, into the board for not following procedures, because we are saying coming soon and then going under contract before it goes into the multiple listing service. So how many days do we have from the time that we list the property to put it in the MLS? 48 hours. 48 hours. So that first line on the new contract, right? Everybody went to the contracts class? Says, I am listing the property today. So you get that signed at the listing. It does not mean you're allowed to advertise the property. It means if you're giving advice about who's coming, who can do work on the house, that you're giving them all this guidance, vendors, you're coming by, you're taking pictures. It's allowing you protection because you're doing work. It does not give you the permission to put a sign in the yard or start advertising it to clients or putting it out. You can do that 48 hours before it goes into the MLS.
I thought the new one was 24. Is it 48?
I don't know. We'll have to look. Is it 48? Unless they've changed it, it was 48 hours.
So what he did is that's not right.
Correct.
I thought it was, okay.
Yes. So we're going to be starting to see a lot of this because this is serious stuff, and this is why we're having this class. So those are things that are happening out there with your buyers, but we need to set expectations, right? So the first thing that we should be doing is finding out what we need to find out. So if you can go to the prospecting for information form, I'm going to read this to everybody that's online. You don't have to write it down. I'm going to give you guys the handouts. There should be handouts in the back. Is that right? All right. Some things you want to find out. Price. Does your seller have any existing offers? If so, can you tell me the highest price you have? That is a fully legal question that you can ask. If your seller already has above list price, can you provide any guidance on how my buyer needs to be above the list price to have a chance? Will your seller accept an offer with an automatic escalation clause? You need to ask that. A lot of agents don't know what that is. I was just talking about this morning. I'm not a big fan of the escalation clause because you could just write the best offer that you can write and not have the agent spend all weekend shopping your offer to get other offers higher to make yours go up. And it's going to eliminate buyer remorse because now your buyer knows that they spent $2,000 over the highest offer price and he's going to get cold feet and could cancel. So I'm not a fan of the escalation clause, but we will go over it. Is your seller looking for the buyer to pay any of the seller closing costs? What are the seller closing costs? commission, taxes, HOA letter. What else do they pay?
Transfer of the deed.
Transfer the deed, moving costs. So we're not asking for the seller to pay any of the buyer costs, but you ask this question, you know, is that important to your seller? Does your seller understand the potential benefit of a lower purchase price with the buyer paying some of the seller's closing costs? Because a higher purchase price means it might not appraise, right? So what I'm saying to the listing agent is, does the seller understand that maybe the list price of your house is $250, we're gonna offer $255, somebody else may have offered $260, but hey, we're gonna pay all of the seller's taxes for the year. We're closing in June, so instead of the seller paying the January through June taxes, our buyer's gonna go ahead and take care of that. That way, we don't have an appraisal problem. Does that sound like something that can help you win the offer?
The other agent's smart enough to get it.
Yes, but you have to ask the question. So then in the steps, you write, the buyer will pay for all taxes. There will be, seller does not need to prorate, buyer will pay it, but you have to have that question. So that right there, my friends, could be why somebody chooses your offer over another agent's offer, because people are just going higher on the price. But let's be honest, what's happening right now with appraisals? Has anybody had appraisal issues? Who wants to count on an appraiser determining your buyer's fate with their offer, right? So would that be helpful? Okay,
But Dominic,
yes.
are there gonna be any lender issues with that?
John's supposed to be in here, but I don't think so, no.
No?
Mm-mm. As long as they have the money to do it, it's just gonna increase their bottom line, what they gotta pay. Why wouldn't you do that?
Okay.
Okay, and we have many more, but that's just on the closing cost section. Inspection and repair costs. Is your seller wanting to sell the house with an inspection at the buyer's option? Now, I don't like the word as is, because I never write as is in the contract, but, you know, is your seller wanting to sell the house without repairs? Yes.
Oh, but someone's trying to get on and is this on Zoom or?
It's on the calendar link in the office.
I don't think that was right on, because Deere's gonna get on.
Mm-mm. Anza can't get on, it's not working.
Letter in, it's gonna get on, so that's why I came in here.
She's been sitting.
Oh my gosh.
She just texted me, is Dominic talking? I'm like, yeah.
Call the front desk. Sorry, guys.
Oh, the people at the top look like they need to be admitted, right? I'm gonna say admit all.
Oh, whoopsie.
See, I need Kathy in here. This is not my thing, so. Somebody help.
You want me to click it?
Yeah. Admitting people now.
Yeah, at the top, you just hit admit all, it
Yeah.
should bring them all in.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Sorry, guys. All right, let me get back to things. Love technology. All right, so the inspection. You ask the question, is the seller wanting to sell the house without repairs? Okay. Is the buyer willing, if the buyer is willing to limit repair costs from the seller, would that be considered a value to your seller? You're asking this question because I'm going to show you there's a form that we're going to fill out for you to present to your buyer with all of these questions answered, so that when you go to talk to your buyer, he knows that you already did the homework and found out all of this information so that he could write the best offer. And if he chooses not to write the offer, that's on him, because you did your homework. Okay, so let's talk about that. Repair costs. So would a stipulation that you're going to do a 5-day due diligence and you're going to limit repairs not to exceed $1,000, would that be beneficial to a seller?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anybody done that before? Good, do it.
I
Limit,
have a question on
yes.
that, though. So what if the roof's bad?
you can still terminate.
Let's say, drop
You can still terminate, you have the due diligence days, but you're gonna limit repair requests to $1,000. And then you call the seller if that happens and the roof needs to be replaced, and you say, listen, I know that we limited repair requests to $1,000. However, the roof needs to be replaced. You know, how do you wanna handle this? I certainly want to make this to the closing table. Now, one thing that we do is we have all of our listings and any house that we do a buyer contract on, we send our roofing company out before we do the inspection. So once you know you win the bid, you call Perimeter Roofing, whoever your roofer is of choice, they will go out that day, walk the roof before your buyer spends any money on an inspection.
You just do that automatically? for all of them?
Automatically, every single house,
Oh, wow.
every single one.
Wait, and that's as you as a listing agent?
Buyer's agent.
Buyer.
Because the number one thing that usually kills a deal is usually the roof, right? Even if it's been recently done by somebody, I had a roof recently done and they had class action lawsuit shingles put on it. So just have them go walk it, doesn't hurt.
Do they charge you for that?
Nope.
No, it's free.
Oh, that's.
Dominic, you have a couple more times coming.
Can we time
Oh,
some
yes.
others in, sorry. Coming in, people.
You guys
Right.
have bulletproof, they can do it by satellite.
Bullet roof does it by satellite. Yeah, Perimeter walks it, goes on it. Some people do it by satellite. He said Bullet Roofing does it by satellite.
Assuming that it's not totally covered by trees.
Yeah.
All right, now the personal property section, you're gonna ask about this. Per the MLS listing, your seller is including these things. Say what they said in the description, because you know how many times they list things in the description and it's not on the seller's property disclosure? If there's certain special things on the property disclosure, clarify that those things are staying. Is your seller willing to leave any additional personal property? Ask the question because your buyer is going to want to ask for a dining room table and you don't want the dining room table to be the deal killer. Okay, so just ask this question. Would your seller prefer personal property to be handled outside of the transaction? All right. Financials, let's see what else. Here's a good question. I assume your seller is willing to entertain multiple offers from the same buyer to give the seller different options. Is that correct? And they're gonna say, what?
That's what I said.
So, okay, good. So you could present two different offers to your seller, to the seller from your buyer that the seller could sign immediately. How many times do we go through and we say, well, we can do this or this, just let me know, we'll do whatever. But they don't sign it and somebody else did what you said, hey, we could do this or we could do that. And then you're like, but I said we would do it, but you didn't have it in writing, right? So when you talk to them about that, now this agent's like, you are sharp. I like this agent. I want to work with them. Say, listen, we want to be the winning bid. So if we drew up an offer one way and then changed it and made it, you know, if it was higher price without all this stuff, would that be more pleasing? We just know that if we present both to you and the seller could sign it right away, that your seller would feel more confident and the other one just dies. They only signed one, but now you are representing two offers for one client. Does that make sense?
That's good.
I've done that, but I didn't word it like that.
I'm there now. You don't have to say another word.
Okay, good. All right, good. I got so much more though, but go ahead.
So are you bringing two at the same time?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay.
You send it over together.
Oh, together. I've done it
Together. You don't send it separate, you send
Okay.
it together. You don't want to confuse them. You say, listen, we want the house so much that from talking to you, here's one option that we're gonna do, and then here's a second option unless this is better for your seller. Whichever way we want to be the winning bid. We wrote two offers so that you know that as soon as you sign it, we are binding.
Okay.
I know, that's right.
Okay, good. All right, good. Good.
So
That
what's the difference of you sending it over separately versus doing it
Just
that
more
way?
it's simple, and we're gonna go through how to present the offer here in a little bit.
Okay.
But it's just more professional, it's less confusing. You gotta think they're getting 10, 12, 13 offers, right? So you gotta keep it simple for them.
Okay.
But like you said, if it isn't in writing, it doesn't exist. So just because you talked and had a conversation with the listing agent doesn't mean that it is. Because I tell you, that happened to me, and that was the last time that happened to me. I said, listen, we can go ahead and remove the closing costs, we'll just increase the sales price. Oh, that's no problem, okay, great. And then they accepted somebody else that did that because it wasn't in front of them.
Right.
So I think I did something similar. So I have one where we put it in offer, and there's like 3 others that we were competing with. They were giving it another day. And I talked to the listing agent to see what we could do to try, because our client really wanted his house. So he agreed to something else, and I submitted that offer over, and that one got chosen. So it's kind of the same, but it was just a different,
Yes,
and that's okay to do. Right?
yes, yes. But if you send it over,
Strategy.
it's just strategy.
Yeah.
We're being proactive, we're having a conversation where this conversation is triggering thoughts in the listing agent, like, okay, this is who we need to work with.
Okay.
This person knows what they're doing. This person's gonna get it to the closing table, right? Allowance, home warranty, is your seller willing to include a home warranty for the buyer? And I usually say, listen, I usually advise all of my sellers to give a home warranty. It helps protect them. If something happens the day of closing, there's no liability on anybody's side. Are you advising your client in that way? If not, I don't, maybe you just advise them not to ask for it, but at least ask. If not, maybe it's something you decide that you would pay for your buyer on, later on, or you can cross that bridge down at the, when you go through the repair requests.
If the listing agent's someone you can't talk to, all of this is for naught.
All of this is for naught if you can't,
Because you
but
gotta try to figure out up front, can I talk to this person? So if it's Rhonda Duffy, if it's Mark Spain, if it's
Yeah.
Open Door, if it's Zillow,
right.
it's a complete way, not only they're not gonna talk to you, you're not even gonna respond for 3 or 4 days. I mean, that's
So-
Yeah, I mean, I had an experience
Yes.
with Rhonda Duffy. It was.
Yes, there are some companies this is not
You
gonna
just
work
gotta know who
for,
you're dealing with. You're just wasting your time. You gotta
but
hit
if
your
we
highest
train
bidder.
them,
She won the bid. She
if we
did.
train them, we have to train these agents out there. If we all started calling, asking questions, right, they're gonna start answering the phone. So this is what we tried to do, and you're showing that your seller, your buyer, what you're trying to do. Closing date. Does your seller prefer a shorter, normal, or longer closing period? That's very important. Is your seller flexible on the closing date depending on the buyer's needs? Possession, is your seller looking for a normal possession at funding or something different? Because again, we gotta teach our clients, our buyer clients, and the listing agent that price isn't always the most important thing. It might be when you close, it might be what type of loan they're doing or what lender they're working with. There's so many things that are important. Earnest money. What kind of earnest money deposit is your seller looking for? Customary 1%. Are they looking for 2%? Do they want it to be non-refundable? If we made it non-refundable after the due diligence, would that be pleasing to your seller? Like after repairs are negotiated? You can ask questions like that. With regard to the buyer financing, will your seller favor a pre-approval over a pre-qualification? So this is something that you are going to want to get together with your lender and ask them if they can update their pre-approval letters for your clients. You don't want a pre-approval letter, you want a pre-qualification. You want it to say all of the items that have been done. Triple merge credit file, verified assets, verified W-2s, bank statements, looked at tax returns, verified employment. Like basically take them through automated underwriting where the offer is as good as cash. It's contingent upon title work and appraisal. So get with your lender on that. And this is another reason when you're going through this with your buyer, you have to explain the importance of getting pre-approved through automated underwriting before you ever even go out and look at properties, because otherwise they're never going to win the bid.
Spring lending does
Yeah, that's
underwriting before.
Yeah,
I mean,
but get those letters.
through underwriting.
Make sure that your vendor, that that and you tell them the name and the phone number of the agent and tell them to plug it into their cell phone, because when that person calls, they better stop what they're doing and answer that phone. Right? You make sure that they know that. Appraisal. Given the potential appraisal issues with the higher sales price, I assume your seller will look more favorable on a buyer's offer if the buyer waives the appraisal contingency or agrees to an upfront to pay $5,000 over the appraised value. Is that right? So that's the appraisal gap insurance, okay? That's risky for your buyers though, right? That's why if you can get them to pay, you know, taxes or moving expenses or whatever. Due diligence. Is your seller okay with the contract due diligence inspection period? How long are they looking for? Or would they prefer a right to inspect? Does everybody know the difference?
No.
Okay, so there's a due diligence form and there's a right to inspect form. The due diligence, the buyer has the right to cancel for any reason whatsoever. The right to inspect, they do not have that right to cancel. They have a right to inspect the property by a certified inspection company, and they can only request repairs to be done. They cannot ask for a dollar amount. They cannot ask for cosmetic issues. It sticks to structural, safety items, nothing cosmetic, just strictly systems. Yes.
In
Dry rot.
time, agents use that right to inspect versus the due diligence.
Yes. Yes, so it is a thing to use, but you have to ask the agent, do they even understand it? Because most of them don't. I did have one happen last year where the agent said the right to inspect was more of a pain in the butt because we couldn't just say, hey, can we settle this with money? Like we could have, but now the seller and the buyer were on the whole inspection item. Their brain was on that we kind of removed that option. Yes.
It's really the way to go. We've been using that because back in the day, that's what it used to be. It wasn't called due diligence. It was called an inspection period. The buyer couldn't terminate. If the seller agreed to make all the repairs, the buyer was still bound to the contract.
Right.
And then several years back, they changed it to due diligence and made it this way that it's kind of more like a free look right
Kind of
now.
going backwards a little bit. We tried to, back in 2002, I think we changed it.
Mhm.
Yes, Jody.
So can you cancel if you don't come to an agreement with?
You can if you don't agree to the terms.
Okay.
You don't agree to the terms.
I have a question too.
Yes.
So I remember David Maxey saying that, I think it was 4 or 5 things, I don't have my notebook in front of me, that we should ask for on every single special steps, basically to make sure that the company is protected and to make sure that our, that retainer fee for our lawyers, that $5,000 is protected, and ask for the seller's disclosure, ask for a survey, ask for a termite, and I think it was like a home warranty. So I just had a buyer and all I put on there was the termite and we lost out just from the termite. What is your suggestion in those situations?
Gilstrap Exterminating, who is a vendor in our office, does free termite letters and inspections. Send them out before you do your home inspection. Does everybody know?
Yeah, but I also meant just even putting it on the special steps, like they were like, well, yeah, that's why we didn't even really consider your offer, but I know that protects us. So what do you suggest we do?
It's a catch-22 because we're in a different market.
Look,
Yes.
you can find any inspection.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jody.
Sorry, going back to that again, does that mean they can get their earnest money back or they're, okay?
Yes.
Just wanna make sure.
Yes.
So you can,
Yeah,
for the
go
right
ahead.
to inspect, they can get their earnest money back.
Yes, if you can't come to an agreement.
Okay.
And you negotiate within the 7, now on this form, please see me before you start using this form.
Okay.
There are different dates. It's like you have to have the inspection done by a certain date, and then you have to have repairs sent over to the seller by a certain date, and then the seller has a certain date to respond in. And then if the seller doesn't respond in a certain date, it's kind of like the appraisal contingency, so you really need to know your dates. So before you fill this form out, please come to me and, or I can have the broker boys talk about it on Monday at 2:30, okay? Because it is a different form. Yes.
I was gonna say, when I receive, like from our listings, when we receive an offer that has nothing on the special steps, I'm like, what are they gonna come back and ask for? Because I feel like it's too good to be true. So I look for someone that's honest.
That's why you put that we will not ask for any repairs over X amount. Okay, you put that, if I see,
If I
You
see
know what I'm
nothing,
saying? So
I
this
assume that I'm gonna get hit with
yeah,
something.
and that's what people
in
do,
the
they tell
amendment.
you, oh, we'll just take care of it during the due diligence period. But protect your buyer and say, you know, as long as there's none, we won't go over $1,500 or whatever. And you're setting the expectation within your buyer too, that you're not gonna, in this market, you're not gonna be able to get a ton of things.
That's a great idea to counter too, because, you know, I mean,
Yeah, it's a good idea to counter, right?
Yeah.
There you go. So this is for both sides. Okay, let me see what else. Okay, this is gonna be interesting. Contingency on the sale of the buyer's current home. Is your seller willing to entertain an offer that is contingent on the sale of the buyer's current home?
No.
Yeah,
Not in this market.
that's right. So what tools do we have?
Homeward.
Thank you. What else do we have? Keller offers, right? Your client should never be writing an offer contingent upon their home closing with those two tools that you have in your toolbox. So if you're not certified, please get certified. Those are tools you need to have in your toolbox. Yes,
Sorry, no homework. What colors off?
Keller offers.
Yeah, what is that?
You can go to our resource page and go ahead and log in. It's an iBuyer program where we will buy the house. Keller Williams will buy the house.
It's like knock.
It's like Knock or Zillow buyers and OfferPad,
Yeah.
things like that. Okay.
I did have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So contingent on their house selling?
Mm-hmm.
No. Contingent on their house closing? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna be liked. It's not gonna be, as,
Not clean.
yeah, it's not clean. So, and just so you know, just because you leave that stipulation out and your buyer really needs to close on that house before they can buy that house, your financing contingency does not protect your buyer's earnest money or liability. They are in default. If they do not sell their house, they can't terminate during their financing contingency saying, oh, we don't qualify because we didn't sell the house. The financing contingency specifically states that it is not contingent upon a house closing. Okay, so do not write offers thinking that, oh, I know my house is gonna close and, oh, well, the financing contingency is gonna protect us, because it will not.
So what would you suggest to tell your buyer that they would chance losing their earnest money if they wanted the house? I mean, I just had that situation. and
But
it
they're
was-
also risking default because they could be sued for commission.
So they need to know about homework.
They need to go homeward or Keller offers.
But what if they're moving from out of state?
They're just, they might need to think about moving twice in this market. You gotta tell them up front. You ask the question, here's what the seller said, I'm gonna write it down on this part of the form.
Mhm.
And you give them options, but if they choose option, whatever they wanna do, then you circle that when you talk to the agent, and why did we not win the bid? And you circle it right there.
Well, no, I mean, as the buyer's agent to the buyer, we just prepared them to say, if something happens with your house, you can be sued for commission as well as
Sure.
you would be.
Or maybe they don't need to be out looking at properties until their home that is closing is through all their due diligence period. And your due diligence period may have 10 days and, you can cancel the same amount of time
Okay.
that your seller. So don't take them out too soon. You can't go look for a house until we're probably about 10 days from your closing, so that we can protect you best. So that way you have the due diligence period to cancel.
I got lucky, okay.
Okay.
Don't worry.
All right. Does your seller desire a post-closing occupancy option for any period of time that allows the seller to stay in the house? Would that be beneficial? If my client isn't moving here until June 30th or July 15th and your seller wants to close on June 30th, would a lease back be beneficial? Great. So we can offer that. Will you and your seller allow me to present our offer in person? Takes 10 to 15 minutes.
You can do that?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
had anybody take you up on that?
But
Okay.
I got to work around, girls. I got to work around. I'm going to show you here in a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
That was the option.
I heard some people doing that.
If not, will you agree to show your seller a 3-minute video presentation from our buyer? Sure, why not? Got one. just show it to you.
Now, that doesn't violate any sort of laws.
Not if you stick to this strict guideline.
Okay.
So everybody in here abide by the rules and the regulations, right? There will be no fair housing violations. There's a strict guideline for this. So if you feel comfortable that you can stick to this guideline, then I would say do it.
Well,
If
now
you
I'm
think you're a
back to-
talker and you're gonna go, oh, you know, you're just gonna ramble on, no, don't do it. So I gave you an outline on how to do it,
Okay.
okay? You need to abide by the rules. There should be no pictures of the people, not talking about their family, nothing. It's very businesslike. Okay? All right, final question.
Dominic,
Yes,
you said something that triggered something, but it's okay for the buyers to write a letter.
in a certain format.
So they can't do that either.
We've had buyers put
Yeah.
stuff and pictures of their family, I'm like,
Yeah.
don't do that.
I've got a whole video
I'm like, don't.
of buyer's family.
Don't do it.
Because
Just,
that puts me at risk, you know, that puts all of us at risk if they're sending me pictures of their family, because then they could say, oh.
call your broker on how to handle that. So
Okay.
please do not do that. Please do not.
Yeah, no.
Yes,
So I even had a situation where my buyer put in an offer and that agent wrote back that she chose, now they were
Yes.
couple was married. She chose this single woman because when she bought the house, she was single. And my client, super smart, wrote back and said, isn't that a violation?
yes. Please call me. We'll get David to call the broker.
Yeah.
Yes, do not do that. It's very serious.
Yeah.
Okay. So does everybody have, and I'm not sure if they sent it to you guys online, but now what I've been going through is this buyer worksheet. And maybe you put it in your buyer presentation, but when you're meeting with the client or you're saying, you get an internet buyer and you're like, okay, great, I'm happy to show you this house. It's noon right now. We got an appointment at 4 o'clock. Before we meet, I want to do a 10-minute consultation with you via Zoom. And you can have all these documents loaded on your desktop and then you can review it with them. But you talk to them about the market, what's happening, and why they should hire you. Because who they choose as a real estate professional is the most important thing that a buyer can do in today's market. So I want you to know about the multiple offer strategy that I have put in place to protect our buyers, to give them the best opportunity to win the house of their dreams. And so you're gonna go over this. So everything that we just did, you're gonna go now fill in the guidance from the seller form. So we just talked about all of these questions and you're gonna fill in this form about what the seller said. Now, if you couldn't get an answer, you just say, you know, they couldn't respond, or if they only answered a few things, fill in what you know. But you should send this to your buyers with every CMA. You know, this should be something you send to them about what you've done for them. That way you can reference it when they don't win the bid. Now on this also, you should have the goal for your clients filled out, what their minimum goal is and what their maximum goal is. So sometimes somebody's like, I wouldn't pay more than $220 on this. Okay, so is $220 your maximum? I need to write this down. So they have this form, you write it down with them, and then you give it to them. If they wrote it down, however, you just make sure that they have it and you get them to initial it or say, is this what you want? Well, no. Okay, so what's your goal? Well, I'd want to get it for $220, but I would go up to $225. So now $220 is the goal, but $225 is the maximum. So during my negotiations, do I have your permission to go up to $225 in my conversations and no higher? I need to know where my limit is. Do I have your permission to do that? And when you're doing stuff like this, you've earned their trust and you've earned the right to negotiate more. Obviously, okay, you want to present the offer at $220, but I know that in my conversations that I can offer $225 and go ahead and get you sent over an offer and you're going to sign it and we're going to, you know, what's their minimum and maximum here? Buyer offer 1 and buyer offer 2. on here. That's the offers that we just talked about. Do we want to offer one offer? Is the second offer going at the same time, or is the second offer after I presented the first offer and we need to revise it? Right? So by sending your buyers this sheet, you're telling them, here's my process, here's a proven system that works, and this is what I do with all of our clients so that we can have the best opportunity to win the house that you want. Any questions on this? Or questions online? We will get you the worksheet tomorrow. Ditto, with questions would be helpful. Sorry, guys, we will get them all. Okay. Let's go through some things here. Some things that to best describe to your buyer and to try to get that point across to the seller is that it's not always about price. It's about minimizing risk to the seller. So how can we minimize risk? We can offer a fair market price with supporting evidence. We can go over fair market price and then offer an escalation clause. Cash offer with no appraisal, waive the contingencies, sell it without repairs, not asking for allowances, everything we just talked about. Another thing that you could use is a buyer delayed closing cost penalty. You know how new construction offers a certain amount if you go over the sales price, $150 a day until it closes?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we offer that? So if you're confident and they did all their approval up front, a stipulation that we write in for our buyers is that should the buyer not close on time, they will pay $150 a day
Or if you're using
up till it closes. Sorry, yeah, so again, another reason why.
Or if you're using the federal.
Or if you're using some of the other no names we're not gonna talk about, is how you ask your buyer, how confident are you in your lender? Because here's what our lender knows that we write in our contracts, and our lender doesn't miss a closing date. They have 100% closing date track record. So is that something that you could use to make your offer different from everybody else's? If you did had to make your home contingent upon a home closing, maybe you offer a portion of the earnest money as non-refundable should it not close. Okay, that's an option. If your home was contingent, like say maybe it's a seller that's willing to take an offer from your buyer and their home is not yet under contract. And that may happen because we're gonna have a lot of sellers that aren't willing to put their home on the market until they find something. So maybe you say, okay, we're gonna go under contract, and if our home isn't under contract in 10 days, then we will give $2,500 non-refundable to the seller immediately.
Did the broker say there's something about you can't say non-refundable earnest money?
Mm-mm.
You have to call something else.
Non-refundable deposit, we can call it a deposit.
You can't call it non-refundable.
So maybe you make it a non-refundable fee, and I also do an extension fee.
Option fee.
So or you can say, if the home is not under contract in 7 days, the seller has the right to terminate the contract without penalty. You can give them a window, but during that 7 days, they also have to do their home inspection. So you can limit the risk. All right, and then of course, some mitigating things is we're gonna go through a buyer's resume. All right, any questions so far? We covered a lot, and we have a lot more to go through, but let's go through some of these questions. Where are we at? What if the seller's property has the wrong info and the roof was listed as 7, but it thought it was 17? Yeah. That's why you have that roofer go out first. So if there are things that are not on the seller's property disclosure. You know, sometimes they don't check all the fixtures and sometimes they don't have accurate information. I always will put in there that the seller agrees to complete sections, you know, whatever, within 1 day of closing date or binding agreement. Like you want to, and you just tell the agent, listen, I know they probably went through it really fast. We just need to go ahead and tidy it up. So here's a stipulation, just, I need them to tidy it up within 1 day before we do the home inspection. But if you have the roofer go out there and authenticate it up front, you can say, you know, was this a typo? They said it was 7, but our roofer said it was 17. You know, just having the knowledge is the power. Okay, there we go. Who are the roofers? Okay, roofers, we got bullet roofing, perimeter roofing. Does anybody know anybody else?
Fraser roofing?
I've got a list.
Yeah, there's several in here, guys, and they're willing to go out there and do that for us. All right, so the approach that we just went over is called the 3E approach. You're educating your buyer and the listing agent. You're exchanging information with the listing agent, and you're asking either or questions. Does the seller want a quick or a longer closing? Does the seller prefer a clean offer, or are they willing to pay any of the buyer closing costs? You know, you can ask either or. Like, what's best for the seller? Is this better or is this better? And you're creating a win-win effect right out of the gate. Okay. We went through all of this. Any questions or anybody have anything else? Yes, Melissa.
Okay, so say you've got a VA or an FHA buyer and that's their only option because of their credit score. How do you get around, you know, the listing agent that says, I don't want VA because they're gonna hammer us on the appraisal?
With an automated underwriting approval from Supreme Lending.
Okay.
And so John was supposed to be in here and he must have something else. I have a list of documents that you can put in your buyer consultation about all the documents that are requested for each type of loan. And it's actually more cumbersome than what Supreme requires, but it is a good way to inform your buyer clients of what the process looks like and what's to be expected. So that way you're setting them up to win. The best way is to get an automated underwriting approval, a commitment letter. If you're not working with a lender that can give you a loan commitment letter immediately, then you should find a new lender. Right? They can take everybody through the entire process and have a full commitment letter and just need to update bank statements and still just get the loan closed. You know, that's how they get it done in 8 days.
I'm a veteran. I did like 6 VA loans last year. You're gonna have to work. I use Supreme every time if I can. I did Navy Federal a couple times. They're terrible, terrible. So those are ones that were late. Supreme got it there, but you have to start that veteran out up front and get them all the way through the process. And then they're looking for a house to attach to it. Then once they formally submit it, then they're still gonna have to go through the VA process, which is still dragged for 40 days.
Yes.
You know, and the VA, because of COVID, they're taking their time going out there. They're doing stupid things. So you just gotta be prepared for it.
Yes,
I have
Donna.
a question, because I have an offer on listing this VA. Are people finding the VA loans are coming in, the appraisals are
I don't
coming
feel
in
like
a lot
they're terrible. They're hit or miss,
I
but
did that one.
the only, it's not necessarily, it's really
It's
not.
repairs.
Yeah, it's the repairs.
Okay.
It's not the appraisal.
Yeah.
So I had a house in Rivermore Park, it's like a $650,000 house. The inspector didn't even go in because of COVID, walked around the outside and said he had to heat it. Yeah, that's thousands of dollars. So my buyer wanted the house, needed a place to go. We're supposed to close that night. The inspector went out, we're supposed to close Thursday. The inspector went out Friday before, he sucked it up. My buyer, the veteran, painted the outside of that house for the VA.
Wow.
That's why people hate VA loans.
Yes, it's the repairs.
They didn't even go in the house because of COVID.
That is crazy.
But a lot of appraisers aren't now.
Yeah, they're
There's
not.
a lot of drive-bys now.
I mean, I had one in Hamilton Mill of all places that came in 30,000 low, on a VA, which was ridiculous for this particular house.
We're gonna see a
Like,
lot of it.
absolutely ridiculous, and it was I argued it. The other people failed to do the Tidewater. And I ended up lobbying for my clients because they were transferring and wanted the house. And I got it up 15,000, but they wouldn't go up any more than that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah, you'd be glad you got that.
But then, so we terminated that. We found another house and the other appraisal came in perfect, right down the road.
Yeah,
So
that's why that's why when you have these conversations with the listing agent, what else can I do to make our clients the winning bid? Since we all know that appraisers are killing the deals left and right now, would paying the taxes work? Moving expenses, the HOA letter, what other fees are they gonna have that we should be aware of, that we can take care of?
So how do you put the moving expenses on the contract? The HOA, I get, you can do that on the.
Talk with your lender, yeah, talk with the lender,
how they want it written.
yeah, talk with the lender.
You can always pay it outside.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that you can do, talk to the lender. But you'll figure it out, whatever you can do, figure it out. Okay, so presenting the resume. There are 3 things that we do. We do the worksheet, look through the worksheet that we just had here, and then we're gonna talk about why we want the home, compliment them about the home, convey that we are looking for a win-win, explain that they have solid financial information if possible, the loan commitment letter or a complete letter from the lender of all the things that they've done. If there's anything that, if you saw through the house that they like to play golf or whatever, or if it's on a golf course, or you can say, hey, the clients also play golf. They're looking forward to living on the golf course. The buyer's agents, the buyer's background or our background experience and the fact that we're full-time. That's the next part. So you talk about the buyer's qualifications and then you talk about yourself. I've been in the business for 5 years. I have a team that works consistently with me every day, 8 to 5, a transaction coordinator, to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. I work with Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners. We sell more homes in Gwinnett County than any other real estate brokerage combined.
So you do a letter and you combine it with what about your clients and yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I've never
Yes.
done that, okay.
Because not only is it about your client, and then you're working with Supreme Lending. They've been your preferred vendor for 10 years. They've never missed a closing date. If they tell me they're getting to closing, they're getting to closing, and they will jump through every hurdle because they are my preferred vendor, and they will jump through every hurdle to make sure that we get to the closing table. And then talk about the knowledge of the neighborhood. Very familiar with this neighborhood. We know the values of it. All right, so then that's it in the letter. But then you can do a little video. And I have a video here. I don't say doing it more than 3 minutes. I did it the other day when I sat in my office, so I'm gonna go ahead and play it. But you can send this video along with the offer, talking about your client without any fluff. Okay, just a little itty bitty fluff. All right, where is that? Let me go ahead and share my screen and then play it. Okay. Let's see here. Hello, everybody. Where did you say I am? Hold on. Where do you see it? That's the whiteboard. You go to files. Up top. Where am I at? Here, let me lower this. Oh, there it is. Okay, simplifying communication. Is it this one? Let me see if I can share this with you guys. All right. Can everybody online see this? Yes? Okay. All right. Let's hopefully you can hear it too. Hey Sherry, it's Dominique Reeves over at Keller Williams. Thank you so much for talking to me yesterday about your seller's lovely home. It does not surprise us one bit that you have multiple offers on this property. Lisa is very interested in working collaboratively together with your seller for a win-win on this property. I want to commend you also on the staging of the home. Lisa fell in love with it as soon as she walked in the door, so great job to you and your sellers. We understand that June 30th is critical for your sellers to be closed by, and I want to assure you that Lisa can do just that. We also know that your seller wants a fair price for the home, especially due to the market conditions that we're in, and you'll see that Lisa is offering just that. I also have a 100% track record for getting our buyers to the closing table on time. So I want to again reassure you and your sellers that we will do everything we can possible up front to make sure that your sellers feel 100% confident in Lisa's offer. Lisa is being transferred here from Chicago. She's been with her company for 20 years and she is in management. They are paying all of her relocation costs. She does not have a property to sell in Chicago. And additionally, she's been fully approved through underwriting, Supreme Lending, our preferred vendor of choice. She can easily close again by June 30th. Earnest money, she's putting down $4,000, which is about a little more than 2% of the purchase price. And she will make it all non-refundable after the inspection and repairs are negotiated. She's making a clean offer. She's not offering for asking any concessions. She's not asking for any personal property. And she is proposing a closing date of June 29th, which will give a one-day cushion for your seller to know that they are absolutely closed by June 30th. Lisa will not be relocating here to Atlanta until July 15th. So she has also put in a 2-week lease back for your sellers to remain in the property after closing at no cost to the sellers, to give them the comfort and extra time to pack up and move without pressure. Your seller is asking $179,000 and Lisa is offering a purchase price of $190,000. With that $190,000 offer, she is able to offer your seller appraisal protection of $5,000. And what this means is that your seller, as long as the home appraises for $185,000 or higher, your seller is guaranteed $190,000 from Lisa. She will pay any out-of-pocket up to $5,000. You know, and appraisals in this current market are so uncertain, so this is an extra protection provided for your seller. Also, if for some reason the home appraises under $185,000, Lisa wants to assure your seller that she will negotiate in good faith to find a mutually satisfactory outcome for your seller. Sherry, I also want you and your seller to know that I am a full-time real estate professional with a full-time transaction coordinator and partners that work closely with me. We can virtually guarantee that nothing will fall through the cracks on our end. We never want to jeopardize the seller's closing date. Lisa has made a very good offer and she feels like she's met and addressed all of your seller's needs and interests. And I wanted to let you know that we appreciate the opportunity to present this offer to you. If you could, since Lisa is only in town for a couple of days, if you could ensure that we had a response by Sunday at noon, this way Lisa can plan accordingly. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present the offer. Have a great day. Okay. So is that, I'll send that to everybody. So it's strict to the facts and it's all about the seller's needs. And if you do it off of what they're looking for, you just send that as a little attachment along with the offer and the offer letter. And now with the offer, I put the offer letter as the first, it's like the first page. Again, no fluff, no personal information. It's just strictly business. Okay, but do you think if you did that, your offer would be looked at differently than the other 67?
My offer letters have made a difference.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I mean, we're a technology company, people.
How much is video? I mean,
I shot that in BombBomb. You can do it on FaceTime. You can save it to your phone, right? There's apps out there. John, you're here.
Yes, I'm sorry I'm late.
That's okay, that's okay. So tell us, what could you do this year, knowing that we're all gonna be in multiple offers, come on up, with our approval letters to help us win the bids?
Yes, that's a great question, you know. Thank you so much for having me come up real quick. I can tell you guys that the same complaint that you hear is the same complaint that we hear, which is we can't get an agent on the phone, we can't get a loan officer on the phone. So if we take an extra step to be proactive and call the listing agent to let her know the details of your buyer, that's huge. As you know, really good agents are calling the lender anyway. If you're a good agent, you're calling the lender to find out, have you really actually looked at a credit report? Have you really looked at the buyer's documents? How far along in the process are you? You also want to know, is this lender responsive? Do they seem like they know what they're doing? If it's someone that you have worked with before. So if we can take a step forward and actually do that before the agent calls us, I find that to be really positive. We may even start sending a video message to the listing agent even instead of a call, because in multiple offer situations, I know as the listing agent, you're getting so many phone calls already. And so now a lender calling, it's another phone call. So sometimes I'll text the listing agent and I will always get a response. Thank you so much for this information. And of course that is tying the buyer's information to your information to the property so they have it all there so they can relay that to their seller. And not only are we helping them to understand the work that we've done for this particular buyer, we're also helping them to understand how we operate at Supreme so they can understand we do the underwriting up front. So during the due diligence period, we're already going to have the loan approval if we don't already have it. I often will tell them we've already submitted the file for underwriting approval. So we're already ahead of the game. And so that provides some reassurance. When we're not winning a multiple offer situation, sometimes the listing agent will actually write me back to say, thank you so much for your communication. We went with another offer because it was more. It wasn't necessarily because of the lender. I don't think we ever lose out because some other lender somehow outlendered us, but we can certainly lose it if we aren't the better offer. I would say there was a multiple offer situation that I was a part of where I was in contact with a listing agent who actually had done business with me before. And the offer that they accepted was not only higher, but then that buyer also agreed to still pay a certain price, even if it appraised lower. So now it's really moved to who can even go above list price and pay the difference, I feel like. And so that can be a little bit trickier when you're using financing because typically they have enough money for the down payment they need.
They have some questions on the screen
Okay.
about lenders. One.
Oh, thank you,
One
Ainsley.
just passed, I think she was asking if they say they don't trust the lender, what objection, but I guess that person maybe hadn't spoke to the lender. It was a question before these.
Oh, okay.
If,
Someone else asked
yeah,
something
they had questions.
previously.
Yeah, about if the lender, the agent said they don't trust the lender, or how do you overcome the objection saying they don't trust the lender? But I guess that would be, hey, why don't you speak to the lender? To the lender.
For sure. Well, and hopefully we're being proactive to
Yeah.
show them why they should trust us. And we just need to know from you, hey, we're putting in this multiple offer. Will you call the listing agent? Terry's done that several times where she shoots me a text and she's like, hey, here's the contact information. And then we run with it from there. So I definitely think that's going to help to step it up. I don't think other lenders are doing that. They don't have time, and if they probably haven't even looked at the documents, if they even have the documents. And so doing all of that, and we'll give a lot of details to the listing agent if we can get them on the phone to reassure them. We're not giving private confidential information, but I'm saying, hey, I have the pay stubs, I have the tax returns, I have the bank statements. These are great clients, and given those details, often if you talk to lenders, they'll say, I'm sorry, I can't release that information, you know, which does not help provide assurance. I'm glad to release that information. We're trying to win a bid. We're on y'all's team to help you get there. So know that when you have a buyer that calls and says, hey, I want to go house shopping, and you're like, have you gotten pre-approved yet? That is a great time to say, let me tell you why I use Supreme Lending, because they are going to come through for you when we get to multiple offer situations. So.
Is there anything on the letter like that we could be more specific with, or with the buyer's permission?
Great question. So there was another multiple offer that we just won, and this particular listing agent wanted me to provide a commitment letter within 24 hours of the binding agreement. So they wanted it to move from a pre-approval to commitment, which we did. So if you've got, sometimes listing agents will also want specific verbiage in the letter. They want it to say this, or they want it to say that. We'll do whatever to accommodate you, which is totally different than what other banks will do, where they say, this is our format, we can't change it. I mean, we'll change it to whatever it takes to make the offer stick, to make the offer win. I think you had one other question too about if there's something else we could put in the letter. I mean, sometimes I'll change the letter to whatever y'all want it to say, if it needs to say approval. And I mean, because we're doing all this work up front, I have no concerns. If I have a concern, we're not even gonna be the multiple offer situation. We're like, don't take this buyer out or do this first. But otherwise, we can stand by it and we'll get as creative as we need to be. Lloyd?
Teacher important. I had a deal last month in February, closed it in 18 days, multiple offers, 349 house, Marietta, right off, boom, the heart of the best schools. The guy called me and said, "Is Harry really your lender?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Does he know you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know?" I said, "Yeah." He called, he didn't talk to anyone else. He called Harry 15, 20 minutes later. He said, "I think you got it."
That's
I
good.
did.
Hey, it's who you know.
Yeah.
Melissa.
Going back to what you were saying about paying a portion of the taxes to win the offer. John,
Yes.
is there any
So
reason
we wrote a
why-
stipulation that instead of prorating the taxes, that the buyer would agree to pay all the taxes from 2020.
Yeah, we don't have a problem. We just want to make sure that we notice that. You may want to really point that out to make sure we see that in the special stipulation so we can adjust, because we're going to have to build an escrow account differently on the estimate. Otherwise, we won't show enough for closing, then it'll be a surprise. Yeah.
Right.
So
And then
that's
somebody asked
that's a great
about
question.
the seller is supposed to order to pay for it. Yeah, it says in the contract that the seller is to pay for the HOA letter, but you can add a stipulation saying that the buyer will pay for it. And so then the closing attorney will, you may have to get authorization from the seller, but even if the seller had to pay for it up front, we could then switch it to the buyer's side at the closing on the settlement statement. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. We could definitely do that. Someone else asked about, can you talk through VA FHA financing? I mean, I think it can be tough in the multiple offer situation to do FHA. So if we can go conventional, we're going to try to go that route. FHA, that value is going to stick with the property for 6 months or however long that case number is. So that may create some adversity on the listing agent seller side. Also, if you're going FHA, chances are you're either down payment assistance or you only have enough money for a 3.5%, which probably won't work if they are looking for a buyer that's going to go above list and pay the difference if it doesn't appraise. So I think FHA, same with VA, I just think government loans are going to be a little bit tougher. USDA might be okay because there's no down payment required, and if the value comes short and the buyer has the cash to pay the difference, then they might be willing to do that. So I think that maybe is a little bit more flexible. Anything else?
Anybody have anything else for John? Any other questions while we're here? Anything online or anybody here? Any scenarios?
Are you seeing a lot of VA appraisals coming in low?
I wouldn't say right now I'm seeing them come in low, but I do see from time to time, I think that's the most conservative appraisal. Veterans Administration just wants to protect their VAs. And so often the appraisal comes in low and we'll switch it to a conventional loan, and then we'll get the appraised value that supports the sales price. So I think that is always a good conversation to have with your buyer. If the value comes in low, we may need to switch to a different loan program and bring some money, and then we can order a new appraisal. Same with FHA. If the FHA appraisal comes in low, we'll switch to conventional or a different loan program, USDA, something else that will allow us to trigger a new appraisal report so we can try and see if we can get the value. That's a really good question. Yes, ma'am.
How would you recommend explaining to the buyer the difference of appraisals? Like if you're going VA, it's gonna come in low, and if they're like, wait, but am I overpaying, underpaying? And so we had an appraisal come in 50,000 low. We did a new appraisal and now it's at value, and the buyer's like, but am I overpaying 50 grand? Like, how do you explain that to them?
That is such a great question. And so much of that, this is why it's so important for the lender and realtor to have a good partnership together, because if we get an appraisal that comes in low, we're calling to talk to you guys about it first so we can come up with a plan. Because if it's a Quicken or if it's a bank and they're just sending it directly to the buyer, hey, this came in low, now you're having to manage the buyer's frustration and their emotions. Along with, and a lot of times lenders will even say, hey, you need to find another house. This didn't even appraise. I mean, they don't even know what they're talking about, but they're totally killing the deal. So we want to get on the same page with you. We want to find out, did you think this might come in low, or do you think that this is really well supported? And then based on how you respond, I mean, and sometimes you guys are like, nope, we're sending an amendment right now to reduce the price because we knew it was going to come in low. Or you're like, no, it should totally be there. And that's when we want to try to figure out how can we get there. So sometimes we talk to the buyer about it before we do reconsideration. Sometimes we do reconsideration before we talk to the buyer. It kind of depends on how grossly it seems to be inaccurate, or if, yeah. So let me also say that what I try to explain to buyers is that appraisers are using data from the past 12 months, and a buyer is using data and competing with other buyers for that current day. And so oftentimes in a market where you've got 10% appreciation every year, it's really going to be hard for the appraiser to go back a year and find things to support this current value. So we're going to try to give the appraiser additional data to help support what you and the seller have agreed is a good price. And if the appraiser can get there, then we can be confident that that's a good value, because the appraiser's not going to put his license on the line if it isn't really worth that value. However, sometimes the appraiser, they have an amazing amount of orders. They're trying to work as fast as they can. Everything is a rush. And so sometimes they need a little extra help, a little extra massaging to show where that value is there. I think that's probably what I would do. Does that kind of help? I know this is what you're doing already. This is your expertise, helping that buyer to kind of get that. But for the rest of you, I think that's a really great point.
Great, thank you, John.
Yes, thank you.
All right, yes, we will be recording this, or this is being recorded, so we will be sending this out, and we will send everybody the documents. Please come to the next class, the listing agent one. That's really what we need to be. We're gonna change the industry and how it is. It used to be tighter. We used to not do multiple offers. We really started seeing it around 2013 or 12, 11. We started seeing that when the market was in, we started joining what the banks were doing with the multiple offers. But there really is a guideline on what we should be following and how we should be, so that we can be sure we're giving everybody the same information so that there's a level playing field. And when there isn't a level playing field, that's when we start creating, discourse within our own industry.
When is the listing class?
I think it's the last, we were gonna try to do it, but we're doing our awards now, so it'll probably be the first week of March, that first Wednesday in March, same time. Okay, any other questions for anybody? Was this a good class?
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Is it possible to get the digital version of this?
Yes,
So we can
I'll send it.
find it?
Yeah, I think I need to take this class like 2 more times.
Okay, well, we got it recorded, so you can watch it whenever you want. Thanks, guys.
This, 13 years in television, this is probably the most targeted full class I've ever taken.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear that. Well, thank you, guys.
Are these materials available online, like their format, like forms or checklists?
I have it all in my PDF. I can send everybody.
All right.
All right, I'll send it there. Thanks, guys.
Look at right here.
I'm very good, you?
Yeah, they'll get it done. It's only 45 days. That's probably 60 days. It's 45 days. I mean, they are not, if they lie, your guy says they can get done in 30 days, they'll tell you he's lying. They're lying 10 days. Because I haven't seen that happen. Okay? That just happened. All right.